Lung, Gay Aunt Jane, Hushy. For 8 straight years now, just saying this name out loud is enough to get you dragged or even cancelled. We're talking about an underground beatmaker who just dumped her wildest fetish stuff right on her main timeline. This is like 10 years of the messiest receipts you've ever seen, from several career-ending cancellations to even grooming allegations. And then there is the viral story about her hanging out at a children's playground and handing out nasty magazines to kids. Of course, the internet labeled her a monster. And once that happens, people often completely stop caring if the story is even true. But today, we are opening the vault. We're looking at the raw chat logs, the deleted apologies, and the real proof that both sides tried to hide. Now, let's get into the real, messy history of Lung. To even begin to understand why any of this matters, or why this person was able to build the kind of massive, dedicated audience they did, you first have to understand the specific corner of the internet she came up in, which is breakcore. A surprising number of people have probably heard this kind of music without ever being able to put a name to it. It is the kind of music that genuinely sounds like someone took a drum machine, fed it a completely unreasonable amount of caffeine, pressed play, walked out of the room, and never came back. And that drum machine has just been running unsupervised ever since. The genre itself traces its roots all the way back to mid-90s European jungle and hardcore music. It is built around these incredibly fast, choppy, high BPM drum breaks that were designed almost specifically to send a sweaty rave crowd completely off the rails. People were not peacefully swaying to this. They were moving in a "my legs are currently operating entirely on their own and I have absolutely no idea how to make them stop" kind of way. It is the exact kind of music that either makes you feel completely, electrically alive, or makes you feel like you desperately need to sit down on the floor and drink a glass of water immediately. Yeah, it was huge in the late 90s and early 2000s, but like any other trend, it eventually started to die down. But the internet never lets anything stay dead. Around the mid-2000s, a specific group of people grabbed breakcore by the collar and dragged it right back out of the grave. Only this time, it felt different. The internet took this loud, weird, chaotic music and made it way more emotional and personal. It wasn't just about being crazy for the sake of it anymore. It turned into this sad, moody, lying on your bedroom floor with headphones on at 3 a.m. kind of vibe. It sounded like music made by someone who spent their whole life online, living through a screen, and had a ton of really messy feelings about it. And with that massive shift in the music's mood came a whole new visual world to match it. Dark, synthetic, heavy anime-influenced art. And most people just assumed that Lung started the whole furry breakcore look, but that is just flat out not true. That whole style and sound actually came from Halley Labs, which you might know as Lapfox Tracks. That's a long-running project of an artist named Emma Essex. Emma was a massively influential figure in this space. She was making furry-coded breakcore long before Jane Frederick, aka Lung, had even appeared on anyone's radar. Emma worked under so many different aliases and personas that just keeping track of all of them is practically a full-time hobby.
What kind of lap fox is this?
This is the Quick Brown Fox. They produce speedcore and gabber.
What kind of lap fox is this?
This is Renard Queenston. He produces IDM, EDM, electro, mashcore, breakcore, experimental, ragacore, noise fusion, shonen-based style and footwork.
What kind of lap fox is this?
This is Mayhem. She produces electro house.
What kind of lap fox is this?
This is Azrael. They produce gabber and hardcore.
But the fact that Jane eventually showed up and started getting credited by the mainstream internet for inventing the whole movement, honestly, does say something about how good Jane was at what she did. And it's not like she was some newcomer either. Jane's been making stuff on the internet for over 15 years now. 15 years ago, YouTube was barely a functioning platform. Twitter basically did not exist. The internet that most people use today looked completely unrecognizable from what it is now. Jane's usernames basically tell her whole story. She started as Lung Boy, then moved to Lung and Hushy. Later, she was Gay Aunt Jane, then Dominatrix in 2020. She even ran a label called Roartycore Records before finally going back to Lung. Each one of those name changes represent completely different seasons of Jane's online life, but the music is where she built her actual reputation. And it is worth being really clear about this, because we can't talk about the drama without acknowledging the art that fueled it. The music is genuinely good. Her 2017 release, Puppy Love Under a Rainbow, became an absolute cult favorite on both Bandcamp and SoundCloud almost immediately. And from there, the catalog just kept expanding. She dropped Stage 4 Lung Cancer, Tiny Troon Adventures, Problem Causer, Lung, and Sentimental Illness. That's what built her audience. You had the traditional breakcore heads who found the music through the usual electronic music pipelines. You had furries who showed up for the character designs and the aesthetic. You had trans and queer online communities where Jane's incredibly raw themes of gender identity, mental illness, and sexuality resonated in a very direct, very personal way. And then you had the general category of weird internet people who just fell down a TikTok algorithm rabbit hole at 2 a.m. and ended up staying.
Taylor Swift. Oh my god! Am I about to introduce you to Taylor Swift?
At the time we are recording this video, her audience sits at over 8,000 followers on Twitter and over 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. And on top of all the music, Jane had been quietly building something massive in the background, something called the Lungverse. You might think they're just a couple of doodles, but this is a full multimedia creative universe that she had been developing for years. The Lungverse is set in a reality called the Atrophere. It is a realm governed by muses who embody abstract forces where characters move between different realities. The themes of identity, trauma, and cosmic horror run through the entire narrative. The main characters include Forlung herself, Gay Aunt Jane, Minx Max, Yo-Yo Bingo, and Baroness Beetle Supreme. Now, let's talk about why we are actually sitting here today. You see, there is a term sitting at the absolute center of everything that follows in this video that needs to be clear before we move into the crazies, and that is paraphilic infantilism. The internet usually just calls it ABDL, which stands for Adult Baby Diaper Lover. ABDL means acting like a baby, but specifically as a sexual fetish. This is completely different from people who act younger just to safely cope with trauma. For them, there's absolutely zero sexual intent involved, and in the furry community, this specific fetish is just known as being a baby fur. So, what are we actually talking about here? It's a sexual interest in baby stuff. Things like diapers, bottles, and acting like a child. But it's done by adults with other consenting adults, specifically for adults. And I need to be 100% clear on this because the experts all agree. This is not pedophilia. They aren't the same thing. Doctors and researchers who study this for a living say the two don't even overlap. Academically, there is no maybe here. It's a fact. But is it weird? To most people, yeah. Is it deeply uncomfortable? Definitely. But is it pedophilia? No. That confusion is basically why the Forlung drama has been such a messy disaster for 8 years. Seriously, keep that difference in mind because it explains everything we're about to see. Right away, it's clear Hushy wasn't exactly hiding. She's on her main account posting about baby rattles and diapers, then drops the line, "Let my people like it's just a normal Tuesday." Then we get her Amazon cart. She literally screenshotted it for the world to see. It's got bedwetting pull-ups for kids sitting right next to a super heavy philosophy book. Talk about a chaotic shopping list. And yep, she posted that right on the public timeline for everyone to scroll past. But it wasn't just her own life, she started telling everyone else how to live theirs. She posted this thread basically saying that if you regress to cope with trauma, you're just repressing your sexuality. The nerve, right? Telling people who specifically don't want the sexual stuff that they're just lying to themselves? I mean, that's a massive and pretty gross thing to say on a public platform. But it gets even weirder. She started tweeting about going to the baby aisle in a store to buy stuff for herself. She even mentioned wearing pull-ups while she was making her music. Like, it's her job, and she's talking about fetish gear like she's just talking about having coffee. The fact that she's so casual about it is almost weirder than if she had made a big deal out of it. So then we get to this back and forth in her replies. She's just openly chatting about ABDL and DDLG stuff. But the kicker is that in that same thread, she admits she has a whole separate account for this. This means she knows she could hide it, she knows how the internet works, but she just chose not to. Yo, being a baby fur is one thing, but doing it on main, that's on another whole level, man. If you want to see the vibe she was bringing, look at her old bio. This lady literally made the mess her entire personality. She's into the idea of sitting in her own piss and crying until someone takes care of her. She claims that acting like a baby doesn't make her a predator. Sure, John, the dictionary might say you're right, but you can't post that on Twitter and expect people to just keep scrolling. But she kept going. Things got so weird that even her own fans were like, wait, what? On her birthday in 2018, she posted about being 6 years old, and she wasn't joking. She was fully acting like a 6-year-old on her actual birthday. I don't even know how you'd explain that to a normal person. And her fans went right along with it. Someone actually mailed her a cassette tape for her 6th birthday. It had cartoon stickers, pink ink, and a 666 sticker on the bottom. I had to look at this 3 times to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Then there's this thread. She starts saying age dysphoria is just like being trans. Basically, that feeling like the wrong age is the same as gender dysphoria. And then, for some reason, she starts beefing with old people for being proud of their age. Her timeline was basically just a place for her most chaotic thoughts. Look at this tweet. She basically says she mailed a bag of used underwear to a partner. I mean, it's legal, but also, Who asked? Genuinely, nobody wanted to know about your Ziploc bags. Then we have the Poopa Troopa account. This is just pure shock value garbage. I'll let you read it for a second so we can just move on. And finally, this. An MS paint drawing of her character comparing police brutality to people calling out predators. I've been trying to find the logic here for 5 minutes and I still can't. Just look at the screen and be as confused as I am. See, when you post stuff like that for years, you're basically giving people all the ammo they need to take you down. And in May 2018, someone finally pulled the trigger. At the time, Jane was living in Seattle with her girlfriend Maria. Her music was finally starting to blow up. She was moving past the underground scene and actually getting noticed. But then, in just a few days, her whole life crashed, and it happened fast. Like most internet drama, it all started with a really messy public breakup. Maria dropped a thread on Twitter saying Jane dumped her just because she wouldn't join in on the baby first stuff. She said she was cheated on, kicked out, and humiliated. The posts were super raw, and they blew up instantly. Just look at what she wrote. Cheated on. I tried so hard. I was lied to, mocked, and blocked. Nobody even hesitated to believe her. And honestly, why would they? After all the weird stuff Jane had been posting, this story was exactly what everyone expected to hear. It made Maria look like the obvious victim and Jane look like a creep. Plus, Jane didn't say a single word back. On the internet, if you stay silent, people just assume you're guilty. And that's exactly what happened here. The final blow was an anonymous post from someone claiming to be Jane's old roommate. This person described Jane as living a total double life. They said they lived together and had no clue the fetish was even a thing. It's actually pretty wild. The roommate said Jane would even laugh at baby fur jokes with them in person just to pretend she was normal. But behind the scenes, she was running private accounts, talking trash about Maria, and basically caring more about her fetish than her girlfriend's mental health. And then the internet found the comic. Jane had her comic about a character named Blueberry Sunshine getting caught by her mom with their hand in the cookie jar. Before all this, Jane joked about ending the comic by having the mom force feed the kid until they literally exploded. On its own, that's just a weird, edgy internet joke, but next to leaked logs, cheating drama, and all the baby fur talk, it looked about as bad as you'd expect. But even with all that, it was still just messy drama until these screenshots dropped. This was the one that actually ruined her. It showed what looked like Jane, using the Hushy account, sliding into the DMs of a guy named Zachary. It was super flirty and full of that baby talk stuff. It really looked like Jane was doing everything she could to get him to roleplay with her. The problem is that Zachary was only 16 at the time. The messages weren't subtle. She's saying stuff like, I'm lonely, I need to be held and kissed, and please bottle feed me. And Zachary was clearly weirded out. He was asking if it was a meme he didn't know or if it was all just a joke. He was totally lost, and Jane's reaction to a teenager being confused and uncomfortable is fine. I'll go get someone else then. By the way, just so you know, Zach and the Twitter user Slimacine are the same person. This will be clear to you soon. For now though, once that screenshot hit the timeline, it was over. The internet was out for blood. And that's when people just started making stuff up out of thin air. Some random person on Twitter claimed Jane tried to kidnap a 16-year-old at a rave. They said she told the kid not to tell their dad. However, there was zero proof, not even a screenshot, but since everyone already hated her, they just treated it like it was 100% real. But then the truth came out. Turns out the kid at the rave just asked Jane for a ride home because they needed a carpool. According to this person, if anything, the whole altercation was my fault. The adolescent had expressed discomfort and mentioned to me that an of theirs was at the show. I asked if they would like a ride, to which they agreed. We got to Arby's and their father picked them up without incident. Then the kid just left. That was the whole story. The person who made up the kidnapping story eventually deleted the post and admitted they lied. And that wasn't the only part of the story that fell apart. This is where Slimacine, the 16-year-old from the Discord logs, takes back what he said. He was the main reason people were calling her a predator, but he posted a statement saying that after he actually talked to Jane, the truth was totally different. He wrote that most of the stuff people were saying about her was either a huge exaggeration or just a flat out lie. She actually proved it to him. But here's the problem. Nobody really cares when someone clears things up most times. By the time he said he was wrong, the lie was already stuck in the algorithm as a fact. Weeks after everything blew up, Jane finally broke her silence. She dropped this massive 2,000-word statement covering the breakup, the leaks, and every single lie on the timeline. And the first thing she did was wreck the official version of what happened. Maria's version of the story was that she dumped Jane because she found out about the fetish, right? Well, Jane says that's a total lie. She was actually the one who dumped Maria. But Jane says the relationship was so toxic that she couldn't just walk out. Maria found out Jane had been cheating, which, yeah, Jane admits she did, but instead of leaving, Maria used it as leverage. Despite this, each time I prompted the idea that our relationship was no longer healthy and that we should separate, she would use the guilt of my betrayal to ensure that I remained submissive, tied down to her. She would say whatever she had to in order to make me believe that I owed it to her to maintain a relationship with her. It quickly became became apparent to me that I would never be able to successfully break up with her face to face. So when Jane flew to Maine for her sister's graduation, she finally had some space. From the safety of another state, she dumped Maria over Discord and blocked her on everything immediately. When Jane got back to Seattle, her apartment was trashed and Maria was gone. But Maria didn't just leave a mess, she took a bong and an old laptop Jane had let her borrow. Literally, right after that laptop went missing, the callout posts started hitting Tumblr. We're talking private DMs and locked tweets that only Jane should have been able to see. In her big statement, Jane didn't try to hide the mess. She admitted most of the leaks were real. The cheating, the weird fetish stuff, she owned all of it. But she was 100% firm on one thing. The chat with Zachary was fake. That Maria was the one on that stolen laptop, logged into her Discord, sending those thirsty messages to a 16-year-old just to frame Jane as a predator. And there's actually proof that the laptop was taken and her accounts were hacked. But how do you prove you didn't type something when someone else is logged into your account? The document also confirmed things about Jane's adult content page that they didn't deny. It included cub content, furry characters in a baby fur context, it included incest content. Jane confirmed that the clown emoji in their AD bio was a community signal for content considered unsightly by mainstream standards. Age play, feral content, non-con, incest, and then there's that Blueberry Sunshine comic. People used it as proof she was evil, saying it was about force-feeding a kid until they pop, but you can literally read the comic yourself right now. Look, the comic literally ends with the kid getting caught stealing cookies, her mom sending her to bed, and her waking up from a bad dream. That's it. People just straight up lied about the ending because making her look like a monster gets way more views than the truth. Then everyone started tweaking over the pear emoji in her bio. It stands for PEAR, which is basically a secret handshake for the baby fur community Jane helped start. So even when she told everyone she was done with that life, she was still using the symbols she created.
So I started this idea, PEAR, pro-expression, anti-repression, or pro-expression against repression, depending on who you are or what you want. And it was originally meant to be just sort of a mantra to, like, express that it's not, ideal or healthy to deny who you are, what you like, and
it's like she couldn't fully quit the world she built even when she tried to walk away, and the drama just would not stop. Then we got the Neozuna mess. This artist, Neozuna, aka Glitterpot, hit Jane up to work on some beats. But then, this person was a total creep with pages of receipts against them. Jane liked their sound and sent over some music files, and that was literally it. Jane had zero clue who this person really was. She said it herself, and even the big YouTube docs about her admitted she probably didn't know.
This person emailed me asking to do a track with me, and I was like, okay, like, you're pretty good at making music, like, here, I'll send you some samples, like, show me what you can do with them. And then, like, suddenly 18,000 people were, like, really mad at me and, like, messaging me and, like, telling me that I was bad and that I had collaborated with, like, a bad person and stuff. And, like, I didn't fucking know anything about them. I didn't run, like, a background check on them because I'm not fucking psychotic. I'm not, like, a insane creep who, like, does a background check on people. So, like, that was clearly a mistake on my part to, like, invite that sort of pain and suffering into my life, like, without understanding what I was doing, like, and so I'm not ever going to collaborate with anybody.
But the internet does not care about context. The hate got so loud that Jane basically banned herself from ever working with anyone again. It's honestly sad for an artist, but when everyone is waiting for you to mess up, you can't afford even one mistake by association. And yeah, we gotta talk about the people she follows. She's been spotted interacting with people like PK and Evie, two creators who have some really dark allegations against them. Although, if you actually look at the proof, they weren't besties, it was just some follows and a few public replies in the same niche circles. But the pattern is definitely there. Maybe she's just really naive, or maybe when everyone treats you like a villain, you end up hanging out with other villains just to have someone to talk to. Fast forward to late 2024, and it's the best example of how this whole 8-year nightmare works. You can literally watch a fake story get built and blow up in real time. This person, Fwaki, who is an actual self-admitted predator, posted that they made a new book and were handing it out at the Seattle playground right next to For Lung. The zine they posted depicted a childlike anthropomorphic animal character performing a on an adult character named Rocco. The post was formatted like a sick motivational PSA. Yeah, like a perspire to acquire kind of thing. The image spread immediately, and the story that instantly formed around it on the timeline was that Jane was currently at a real children's playground, physically standing with a map, handing out pedophilic material to kids. The reaction was exactly as chaotic as you'd expect. Except when you actually look at the facts, it was total cap. Jane had to jump online and was like, no, I'm not loitering around any playgrounds or distributing any off-color literature. And I never will, period. And I know it's useless to request this, but in the future, please try and refrain from immediately believing and reacting to random trolls who name drop for lung for shock value. When people actually checked the receipts, they realized the whole post was just a sick joke. Fwucky isn't a joke, but the idea of them being at a playground with 4 lung was just a troll post meant to get people mad. Someone literally posted, Fwucky barely even knew who 4 lung was, much less knew her personally. It was a joke. Whatever Fwucky may be, they're not deranged enough to hand weird stuff out to kids. And then Fwucky themselves confirmed it. They wrote, I didn't realize 4 lung was this big of a deal. I thought she was just some rando Zumerian musician these freaks kept accusing me of knowing, so I made a little joke. Plus, the Seattle playground isn't even a real specific location you can find on a map. The most plausible real-world reference would be Cal Anderson Park, which is just a general park with absolutely no playground equipment. It is not the kind of place you would typically find children playing anyway. So, does Jane's overall orbit raise questions? Yes, but the specific horror story, Jane at a playground with a predator, falls apart the second you actually fact check it. And that right there is the whole vibe of this 8-year mess. So, is Jane Frederick an innocent person? Nah, that's not what I'm saying. Some of the stuff she's done and the sketchy groups she's been in is weird as hell. I'm not trying to hide that or make excuses for the messy parts, but we also can't ignore that a huge chunk of the proof everyone's been using for 8 years is either totally made up, taken back by the people who said it, or just completely twisted to look way worse. The internet built a monster out of stolen laptops and half-truths. I just thought you should have all the receipts and decide for yourself if she is the villain or not.